What's up, you guys? It's the perfect escape. I wanted to come on here today to talk about volume one of my food addiction diary. I have not yet gotten together a real structured way of making these type of videos, but I plan on following up in a more constructive way so that my listeners and people who are interested in these videos can really learn and jot down and get the feedback that they need to help with their struggle or their addiction. um I have been struggling with food addiction, and I kind of wanted to get into specifically what food addiction is, because a lot of people don't know what the real definition of food addiction is. Um, the root of food addiction, will start there, is a trigger, usually, that is derived from the brain chemicals, like the dopamine chemicals within our body. And the dopamine chemicals in our body produces this pleasurable feeling that increases the dopamine transmissions in the brain. So to kind of simplify that, um, it feels good to eat. It feels good to have that feeling of release when we overeat, or even when we eat things that are not necessarily good for our bodies. And I have been personally um, been told that certain addictions, um, you know, are different than other addictions. I believe that all addictions are on the same ground and foundation, of that sometimes it can be caused by a trigger, or it could be caused by trauma, or it could be just like in your DNA as well. Um, but I have been struggling with food addiction on and off in my life when it comes to how my mood is. So depending on how my mood is in my years of the cycles in my life, I struggle with food addiction. I also struggle with extremities, meaning that I usually navigate naturally from a spectrum of 0 to 100. And for me to create a balance, a healthy balance in the middle, I have to really kind of have other things in my life that I feel are going good, where I can really feel like I have a healthy balance with work, with health, with relationships, with, friendships, family, love, home life, me time. Like, if I don't have a structural schedule and routine for myself, I can really get lost in the spectrum of 0 to 100, which triggers my food addiction. And a lot of the times my food addiction does stem from disappointment. It stems from disappointment, and it stems from a feeling of feeling lost. And whenever I feel lost, or if I feel disappointed and I don't have the answers, for me, knowing myself, I know that I have to be very careful, because I can resort to overeating, overindulging. So in the past, I didn't know that's what it was, until it became noticeable within my functionality and my body. Like, my body started to speak to me and say, hey, this isn't your normal regimen. You're doing something that usually you don't do. And so, yeah, food addiction is very tricky because I do feel like even though it's all the same, even though it's like we all struggle with the same thing in that category of food addiction for the people who can relate, there are different triggers and there are different things that makes the food addiction worsen or it brings it back up again. So personally, specifically for me, food addiction runs in my family. So in my family, overindulging in general runs in my bloodline from my mom's side and from my dad's side. They both have, addictions. And I'm being very open with this because it's my channel and it's specifically catered to what I want to do, what I believe in, the audience that I want to attract, the audience that I want to help and share my experiences with. And so I feel comfortable and like this is a safe place for me to share these things with people to help someone else out there. But yeah, my food addiction. Um, so let's just backtrack just a little bit. So on a like on a time in the cycle in my life where I feel like everything's structured and like everything's flowing to where I can foresee and plan things out confidently, I am a healthy person naturally. Naturally, I am a healthy person who has downtimes of triggers that resorts to being off balance, that resorts to food addiction. Okay. And so my true nature is to be healthy. And my true nature is to eat healthy. I am vegan. I don't eat meat. That doesn't mean that just because you don't eat meat, you're healthy. But I will say I work out a lot. Like I've had 2 memberships at one time. I love to go for runs, and on my true nature self is to detox and to have breaks of giving my body a break. And that does stem from my personality type, which is very extremely so I my personality type is kind of like um black or white, and I have to create that gray area and do the work to create that gray area space for myself, because when I'm doing good with my diet and my health, I'm doing really 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 good. But then when I'm not, and something happens to where it's like a huge transformational trigger, I find that it's really 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 bad, and I get really really lost in the sauce with my food addiction. Right? So yeah, food addictions, everyone's experiences is different. Some people gorge, some people um like they just have different, a different way of expressing their food addiction, which I really don't want to get into the details of that because I feel like that content is very sensitive. Maybe in the future I'll think about talking about like the particulars about what food addiction is in that way. But to generalize it, for me personally, from my own experience, food addiction has caused me to also isolate, meaning like I am able to like maybe go out and like go to church and somewhat be around people, but then I have this pocket of isolation within myself to where it's just about me and the food, the food that I eat that's not good for my body, for my health in general. And for me, I have a lot of 6th house placements within my birth chart, which I know a lot of people, some people know about astrology and natal charts, and some people don't who come onto my channel. But I have to, just to sum it up, I have to pay extra attention to my routine with health. Health has to be like my number one priority in my life, because I don't have the same grace as some other people with being able to have the luxury to eat whatever they want and then it not having a cause and effect on their body. For me, I'm very sensitive. I am gluten free, non GMO, vegan, more so also plant based because of my blood type and my DNA. A lot of the people in my family are vegans, and a lot of the people in my family have diabetes and sensitivities to foods, even though they still eat them. They don't listen to their bodies. Me, I don't have that same open window. If I don't follow the guidelines and what I'm supposed to eat, then I will pay for it. And with my food addiction, it just makes that 10 times harder, because when I'm have food addiction, I'm very depressed. So there's an aspect of me that really kind of doesn't care, because I'm kind of lost in the sauce of my emotions, right? So, I just wanted to come on here and kind of speak openly about food addiction in general, because, it's a real thing, and it's something that I'm going through right now and struggling to get up out of, because certain areas in my life aren't the way that I desire them to be going. And I'm working, doing the work, the foundational work to change, make those changes in my life so I can get back on track to my true nature self. But in the midst of it, I am fighting having that sort of escapism with food addiction. And that's why I call my channel The Perfect Escape, because there should be no place that you escape to but your true nature, yourself, which is, your ideal self. And my perfect self and my true nature is to be healthy, but I'm struggling with this real thing, food addiction. So, didn't want to make this video for too long, but I did want to break down like different steps of how you can cope with food addiction on a day where you're feeling really low, having anxiety, or you're depressed, or whatever you're going through. Because I do find that with food addiction, it's very important that you keep in mind your environment, because a lot of people aren't on the same page as you when it comes to health. And with food addiction, that's all that it's about. And your environment, I think, is the number one thing, because if that isn't intact, which that is a huge issue for me, then if that isn't intact, then it's really hard to get on the bandwagon, depending on whether or not you have support with whomever you live with, or your environment. That makes a huge impact and difference on, how long, like how you're able to sustain your consistency with overcoming your food addiction. Because food addiction, it could derive and come up and then last for a long time, or it could be, something that it's a constant thing that you have to constantly work at when you have food addiction. Because as soon as you have a strike of emotion that you feel like you're out of control with, or you're lost with, or whatever you feel, then it's a safe place to go to with just, your food addiction. And then you feel better. You feel like the dopamine releases from your body from the foods, the sugars, and everything like that. For me personally, I struggle with sweets. I struggle with sweets like desserts, and like, shakes, and, you know cream and stuff like that. I struggle with that personally. And I'm not afraid to, share that with you all. But yes, that's a part of my addiction. So when you struggle with food addiction, you just have to kind of keep in mind constantly that it's something that has to be a part of your fight, probably for the rest of your life. So I'm going to send this video up right here. I would like to break down more of the logistics and experiences and testimonials from other people, even on my channel, with food addiction. You know, people out there who struggle with food addiction in whatever capacity. You know, it could be a larger capacity than mine. It could be a smaller capacity than mine. We're all going through the same thing. We're all trying to overcome and fight the same thing. And so I just want to share my experience with everyone out there. You know, people like to prejudge because you're a certain size, or, you know, you might not look like you struggle with food addiction, which is something that I go through. People don't know, or if you do, and people judge. So we're all on the same playing field of having our own experiences, struggling with the same issue. So this is an open platform for people to come to express their struggles and give feedback to help others, you know. So thank you so much, guys, for listening to my channel. There will be more videos upon this subject in the future, and I love you guys.